Do you want to know the secret to changing your entire life without changing your job, your location, your relationship, or even your daily routine? Talk to yourself differently just for one day. One single day of powerful, intentional self-talk can break the chains of self-doubt, awaken your hidden potential, and realign your life in a direction you never thought possible. The way you speak to yourself is either a weapon or a healing balm. It can destroy your dreams or give birth to them. And most people are at war with themselves. You've been convincing yourself you're not good enough. You've been tearing yourself down before life even had a chance to build you up. You've been speaking fear, failure, and frustration into your own soul and wondering why you're exhausted. But what if, for just one day, you chose something different? What if today you rewrote the script inside your mind? What if, instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you asked, "What's strong within me?" The way you speak to yourself is the foundation of everything you experience in life. Your internal voice isn't just commentary. It's the architect of your beliefs, choices, actions, and ultimately your results. Most people underestimate how powerful their self-talk is. They believe that what happens in the external world is what controls their confidence, their motivation, and their outcome. But the truth is, it's the inner world, the thoughts you repeat, the language you use with yourself that actually creates the external results. Every time you say something to yourself, even silently, you're planting a seed. If those seeds are filled with doubt, fear, or shame, then what grows from them will reflect that. You'll hesitate instead of acting. You'll shrink back instead of standing tall. You'll settle instead of striving for more. This isn't because you aren't capable. It's because your inner voice has already decided your limits before you even begin. That inner voice, whether uplifting or destructive, becomes your constant companion. It's the narrative that runs in the background of your daily life, guiding how you see yourself and how you interpret everything that happens to you. When your inner voice is negative, it distorts your perception. You stop seeing opportunities and instead see problems. You don't recognize your own strengths because you're too busy criticizing your flaws. You may even sabotage your own progress because somewhere deep inside, your self-talk has convinced you that you don't deserve success. That voice becomes the lens through which you see the world. And if the lens is dirty with self-doubt and harsh judgment, everything looks darker than it really is. This is how powerful your words to yourself truly are. They aren't just passing thoughts. They are building blocks of your identity. Now think about how differently life feels when your self-talk is empowering. When you tell yourself that you're capable, resourceful, and strong, your brain starts to look for proof to support that belief. You take more initiative, bounce back quicker from setbacks, and hold your head higher. You carry yourself with a quiet strength, not because life suddenly got easier, but because you've changed the way you interact with yourself. You become your own source of motivation rather than relying on others to validate you. You stop waiting for someone to give you permission to believe in yourself because you've already spoken that permission into your mind. This shift in internal dialogue doesn't require a change in your circumstances. You don't need a new job, more money, or a better relationship to start speaking differently to yourself. All it takes is a conscious decision to stop feeding your mind with destructive words and start choosing words that align with who you want to be. Your mind is listening. It hears every word you say to yourself, and it builds your self-image based on those words. If you're constantly saying, "I can't," "I'm not good enough," or "why bother trying," then your actions will follow that script. But if you begin to say, "I am growing," "I've got what it takes," or "every step forward counts," then your actions will start to reflect that new script. Your confidence will rise, your focus will sharpen, and your energy will shift. The voice you use when you talk to yourself is more than a habit. It's a system of belief being written in real time. It's shaping not only how you feel, but how you show up in the world. And it's something you can control. Imagine the way you speak to someone you truly care about, someone you would do anything to protect, encourage, and lift up when they're struggling. You offer them comfort, understanding, and compassion. You tell them they're strong, that they're doing their best, that setbacks don't define them. You remind them of their worth when they forget. Now ask yourself, do you speak to yourself the same way? Most people don't. In fact, many are far more cruel to themselves than they would ever be to another person. They call themselves names, beat themselves up for every mistake, and relive their failures in a mental loop. The same voice that would defend a loved one becomes a harsh critic when directed inward. This disconnect is where the damage begins. When you treat yourself with disrespect, even through quiet thoughts, you chip away at your own sense of value. You undermine your ability to grow because growth requires patience, not punishment. You don't yell at a flower to make it bloom faster. You water it, give it light, and protect it from harm. You need to start seeing yourself as something worth caring for, not just when you succeed, but especially when you're struggling. That's when your voice matters most. Self-respect isn't earned after you've fixed everything. It begins the moment you decide to speak to yourself with the dignity you deserve. The truth is, self-respect is not about arrogance or ego. It's not about pretending you have no flaws or always thinking you're right. It's about acknowledging that you are a human being worthy of compassion. It's understanding that you can hold yourself accountable without tearing yourself apart. You can want to improve without constantly telling yourself you're not enough. In fact, the more love and respect you show yourself, the easier it becomes to create real change in your life. When you feel safe within your own mind, when your thoughts support you instead of attack you, you become more resilient, more grounded, and more motivated to rise higher. Think about the times in your life when you were the most discouraged, the most unsure of your place. If you could go back to that version of yourself, would you yell and criticize, or would you offer a kind word? Would you shame that version of you, or would you wrap them in grace and say, keep going, you're doing better than you think? You have the opportunity to give that version of yourself what they never got. Kind, respectful words that lift you up instead of push you down. Every single day, you have the power to be the person who believes in you, even when no one else does. When you start speaking to yourself with respect, something incredible happens. You begin to believe it. You begin to carry yourself differently, walk into rooms with more confidence, and take on challenges with more courage. That internal respect radiates outward and sets the tone for how others treat you too. When you show the world that you respect yourself, people take notice. You stop tolerating disrespect because it no longer feels familiar. You stop chasing validation because you've already given it to yourself. The standards you set internally become the boundaries you enforce externally. This all begins with how you talk to yourself. Not once, not just on your best days, but consistently, daily. You must become the voice that reminds you of your worth, especially when life tries to convince you otherwise. You must speak words that build rather than break. You must hold yourself to a higher standard, not in performance, but in the way you treat your own soul. That's where true power lies, in becoming your own source of strength through every high and low. Every time a negative thought enters your mind and goes unchallenged, it digs deeper into your belief system. It begins to define how you see yourself, how you interact with the world, and what you think you're capable of. The most dangerous thing about negative thoughts isn't that they show up, because they will. That's natural. The danger lies in allowing them to live there, unopposed, as if they are truth. But here's the reality. Not every thought you think is true. Not every emotion that shows up is a reflection of your potential. The key is to become aware of those thoughts the moment they arise, intercept them, and deliberately choose to replace them with something better. When you think to yourself, I'm not good enough, that's not just a harmless phrase. It's a seed. If you allow it to sit, it will grow into insecurity, hesitation, and self-sabotage. But if you stop in that moment and say, wait, where did that thought come from? Is that even true? You take back your power. Awareness is the first step in transformation. Most people live in reaction to their thoughts. They think something negative, feel bad because of it, and accept it as reality. But thoughts are not permanent. They are not facts. They are patterns, and patterns can be broken. This requires mental discipline, the same way physical fitness requires training. When a negative voice in your head tells you, you always fail, that is your cue to respond with a new voice. That's not true. I've overcome before, and I'm learning every day. It might feel forced at first. It might feel like you're pretending, but repetition rewires the mind. What you say to yourself over and over again becomes what you believe, whether it's truth or not. So if you're going to repeat something, let it be something that builds you up. Let it be something that gives you energy instead of draining your spirit. You don't need to argue with every negative thought. Some don't even deserve your time. But you do need to be bold enough to replace them with thoughts that align with who you're becoming, not who you used to be. The voice in your head should sound like a coach, not a critic. A coach doesn't ignore your weaknesses, but they never let you forget your strengths. A coach doesn't lie to you, but they remind you of the truth when your mind is clouded by doubt and fear. You can become that coach for yourself. It's not about lying to yourself or pretending that everything is perfect. It's about choosing your response. When your mind says you're behind in life, you can respond, I'm on my own path and I move at my own pace. When your thoughts say you'll never make it, you can counter with, I've made it through every day up until now. I won't stop now. This is not false hope. This is strategic self-leadership. You are training your brain to think in ways that support your growth rather than limit it. The more you practice this, the easier it becomes. You'll begin to notice negative thoughts faster. You'll interrupt them before they spiral. You'll have a mental library of empowering statements ready to take their place. And over time, the negative voice will lose its power, not because it disappears, but because you no longer give it control. You've built a stronger voice, a wiser voice, one that chooses truth over fear, growth over guilt, power over pain. Words are not just sounds or symbols. They are instructions you give to your brain. Every time you speak to yourself, you're programming your belief system, whether you realize it or not. The things you say repeatedly, especially the things you say in your head when no one else is listening, begin to form the core of what you believe about yourself and the world. These beliefs don't just stay as ideas floating in your mind. They evolve into actions, habits, and patterns that shape the direction of your life. This is why it's so important to be mindful of your inner dialogue. The words you repeat become your beliefs, and your beliefs become your destiny. When you constantly tell yourself, I'm not smart enough, or I never do anything right, you begin to live in a way that proves those statements true. You avoid opportunities that challenge you. You hold back your ideas in conversations. You sabotage relationships because you don't believe you're worthy of love or respect. These are not flaws in your ability. They are the result of beliefs rooted in repetition. Over time, even if those statements started as just thoughts or temporary emotions, they solidify into your internal truth because you never questioned them, you never replaced them. And so they grew stronger and more convincing. But the same mechanism that turns negative words into limiting beliefs can be used to your advantage. When you choose to speak words of strength, courage, and self-respect, even if you don't fully believe them yet, you plant new seeds in your mind. Every time you say, I am capable, I am improving, or I am enough, you're giving your brain a new instruction. And with repetition, your subconscious begins to accept these instructions as reality. You start to behave differently, you take more chances, you recover faster from failure, you begin to act as if you truly are capable, and eventually that becomes your truth. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't require perfection. What it requires is consistency. You can't speak power into your life once a week and expect it to change you. Just like physical strength is built through repeated effort, mental strength is developed by speaking truth and power over yourself again and again. Every time you choose an empowering thought over a limiting one, you're rewiring your brain. You're creating new pathways that make confidence and clarity more natural over time. It's also important to understand that beliefs are not always formed by logic. Most of them are emotional. You might have evidence that you're successful, talented, or loved, but if your inner dialogue doesn't support that, you won't feel it. You'll always be at war with yourself. Your reality pulling you one way and your self-talk pulling you another. That's why changing your words isn't just helpful, it's essential. Because once your words begin to support your growth, your emotions start to follow, and then your actions begin to align. That's how transformation becomes sustainable. Not because your circumstances suddenly improved, but because your beliefs did. You don't have to wait for someone to come along and affirm your worth. You don't have to wait for a big success to finally feel confident. You can begin to speak the words now that build the belief you've always needed. Speak as if you are already who you are becoming. Talk to yourself the way your highest self would. That voice already exists inside you. It's just been buried under years of negativity, doubt, and fear. But it's there, waiting to be strengthened, waiting to be heard. And every word you say to yourself is either moving you closer to your highest potential or pulling you further away from it. The mind is constantly absorbing, analyzing, and responding to everything it hears, especially when it comes from within. Most people speak to themselves without thinking about the impact of those words, unaware that the brain is recording and reacting to every phrase. When you repeat something, even quietly in your head, your subconscious listens, accepts it, and begins to act on it. Your words don't just reflect what you feel, they shape what you believe. And those beliefs quietly direct your life in ways you don't even realize. If you consistently tell yourself you're tired, overwhelmed, or unlucky, your brain will adjust your perception and energy to match that message. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and over time, your life begins to mirror the language you've been using. The brain is designed to follow patterns, and it prefers consistency over truth. If you repeatedly say, I'm a failure, even if it isn't objectively true, your brain will start to filter your experiences through that lens. It will magnify your mistakes and minimize your successes. It will push you toward decisions and behaviors that validate that message. This isn't because you're doomed to fail. It's because your internal programming is working perfectly, just following faulty instructions. Your words are instructions, commands to the subconscious, and your brain is doing exactly what you've trained it to do. If you want different results in your life, you have to give your mind new instructions. You can't speak negativity all day and expect your life to move in a positive direction. Your brain won't lead you towards something it doesn't believe you deserve or are capable of achieving. But if you begin to give your mind new language, it will slowly begin to reprogram itself. If you say, I'm learning, even when you've made mistakes, your brain responds with curiosity instead of shame. If you say, I can figure this out, instead of, I can't do this, your brain begins looking for solutions instead of problems. These small shifts in language make a massive difference in the way you experience challenges, setbacks, and growth. This is why the words you choose matter so deeply. You are not just speaking into the air. You are speaking into your nervous system, your emotions, your choices, your very identity. Words become thoughts, thoughts become beliefs, and beliefs become behaviors. It happens in layers, sometimes quietly, sometimes without your awareness, but always with impact. And the beauty of it is that you can change the direction of your life by changing your words one thought at a time, one sentence at a time, one belief at a time. The brain is incredibly adaptable. It doesn't care if the words you feed it are true or false. It simply follows the dominant message. That's why many people live in fear, not because danger is always present, but because they've told themselves to expect it. That's why others stay stuck, not because they lack potential, but because they've spoken words of limitation so often that their brain no longer sees another way. But the reverse is also true. The moment you start using intentional, empowering language, your brain begins to shift its patterns. It starts building new associations, seeing new possibilities, and generating new confidence. You don't have to be perfect with your thoughts, but you do have to be intentional. Every time you speak to yourself, you're either reinforcing a future of strength or one of struggle. Your brain is listening. It doesn't forget what you repeat, So speak as if your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. The way you speak to yourself in the face of adversity determines whether you crumble or rise. Life will always present difficulties, and sometimes those moments come suddenly, like a storm you never saw coming. The natural instinct in hardship is to retreat inward, to spiral into thoughts of self-blame, hopelessness, or confusion. But the truth is, these are the exact moments when your inner dialogue matters most. What you say to yourself when everything feels like it's falling apart either becomes the lifeline that pulls you through or the weight that drags you deeper. If you've trained your inner voice to respond with courage, clarity, and resilience, you give yourself the greatest possible advantage, not by avoiding pain, but by knowing how to move through it. Resilience doesn't come from avoiding struggle. It comes from learning how to face it without destroying yourself in the process. That starts with language. In the heat of stress, when your back is against the wall, when no one else is around to motivate or guide you, your voice is either your greatest tool or your worst enemy. If in that moment you say, "I can't handle this," your body will tighten, your mind will fog, and your spirit will retreat. But if you've trained yourself to say, "This is hard, but I've been through worse," or "I will not break here," then your whole being rallies behind those words. You may still feel pain, but you're no longer drowning in it. You're rising slowly with intention. The human brain reacts powerfully to repetition. And that's why what you say in difficult moments can either condition your mind for resilience or for surrender. Think about what happens when you go to the gym. Your muscles grow, not because the weight is light, but because you push through the resistance. Your mental strength works the same way. The pressure isn't there to break you. It's there to train you. But the training only works if you meet it with the right inner response. You don't have to feel fearless, but you do have to speak as if you're willing to move forward anyway. Fear may still exist, but it doesn't get to make the decisions anymore. And the more you practice speaking with strength during adversity, the more automatic it becomes. At first, it may feel forced. You might not believe the words you're saying, but repetition builds belief, and belief fuels action. Eventually, your brain adapts to this new habit. It begins to expect that in the middle of chaos, you'll respond with strength instead of despair. And when that becomes your default, you become someone who doesn't collapse in storms. You become the storm, calm, controlled, unshakable. There is deep power in being the person who can be both honest about pain and unrelenting in the face of it. It doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means saying, "This hurts, but I'm still standing." It means choosing language that lifts you out of victimhood and into ownership, not because everything is perfect, but because you've learned how to hold your own through imperfection. That's a kind of strength no one can give you. It's something you build from the inside. And it begins with what you whisper to yourself in the dark when there's no spotlight, no audience, and no comfort. Only you, your thoughts, and your decision to rise. When you make it a habit to speak strength into your struggle, you create a powerful inner resource that money can't buy, no book can teach, and no motivation video can replace. You become the person who walks through fire and comes out wiser, calmer, and even more determined, because your voice has been trained not just to survive, but to thrive, even in the worst moments. That's when self-talk becomes more than just positive thinking. It becomes power. The words you speak to yourself are not just about what you believe in the present. They are seeds that shape the future you are stepping into. Each sentence, each phrase you repeat to yourself becomes part of the blueprint your mind uses to construct your life. When you consistently speak to yourself from a place of limitation, fear, or regret, you're not just narrating your current experience, you are reinforcing a reality that continues to hold you back. But when you begin to speak from the perspective of the person you want to become, you ignite transformation. You send a message to your mind, your body, and even the energy around you that says, "This is who I am now, and this is the life I am building." The words may feel awkward or unfamiliar at first, but repetition gives them power and belief begins to grow from there. Too often, people live in their past vocabulary. They repeat stories of what went wrong, how they failed, who hurt them, or what they lacked. That vocabulary becomes an emotional prison. They're constantly reliving old experiences with new energy, never giving themselves permission to move forward. But speaking from your future self changes everything. Instead of saying, I always mess things up, you say, I'm learning to handle things with strength. Instead of, no one ever respects me, you say, I am becoming someone who commands respect with calm confidence. This isn't delusion, it's direction. You are not pretending that life has no problems. You are simply choosing to give more voice to where you're going instead of where you've been. The brain responds to identity. It needs to know who you are before it knows what actions to support. When you speak from your future identity, you're telling your mind, this is who I am now. And your brain begins to filter your decisions, emotions, and focus based on that identity. If you speak like someone who is healed, wise, and grounded, your brain starts adjusting your reactions and perceptions to match that version of you. The more consistently you speak this way, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, you stop reaching for your old patterns because your mind has accepted the new language as truth. You are no longer acting like your past self. That shift in language also changes your energy. People can feel when you're aligned with strength, vision, and authenticity. You don't have to convince anyone of your value. It radiates from your presence. When your inner dialogue reflects clarity and purpose, it naturally influences how you carry yourself. You begin to walk with more intention, make decisions with more confidence, and interact with others without fear or the need for approval. All of that starts not with external validation, but with how you choose to speak to yourself in private moments again and again. Your future identity isn't waiting for permission to arrive. It's waiting for your words to call it forward. You don't need to wait until you feel ready to start speaking as the person you were created to be. Speak with discipline, not just emotion. Speak from vision, not just circumstance. The words you use are not only describing your journey, they are defining it. You have the authority to rewrite the narrative of your life by choosing the vocabulary of growth, power, healing, and progress. Every time you do, you take a step closer to the life that matches that language. Speak with direction. Speak with purpose, and watch as your future self begins to meet you in the present. For the next 24 hours, speak to yourself like someone you want to become. Don't allow any negative self-talk to pass your lips. Don't entertain thoughts that don't serve your purpose. Don't repeat words that make you small. Be deliberate, be relentless, be your own revolution. And at the end of the day, take 5 minutes to reflect. Write down how it felt. Write down what changed. Write down the moments where that voice helped you stay strong when you would have crumbled. Because that's how new habits are born. That's how new lives are formed. You want transformation? Start with the conversation you have with yourself. Talk to yourself like this for just one day, and you will never go back to the old version of you again.